I always thought my brother and I were unbreakable. You know how some siblings grow up like rivals, constantly competing? That wasn't us. He was younger, and from the time he could walk, I sort of made it my mission to protect him. I was the one holding his hand when he was scared of the dark, sneaking him candy when mom said no, and covering for him when he broke things around the house. In a way, I felt like half sibling, half parent. There's this one memory that keeps replaying in my head. It was a rainy Sunday afternoon. I must have been 12, and he was maybe 9. We were sitting by the window, watching the water streak down the glass. He leaned his head on my shoulder and said, "Promise you'll always have my back." At the time, I laughed, because what kind of 9-year-old talks like that? But I promised, and I meant it. For years, I kept that promise. I gave up things so he could have more. I remember working late shifts just to help cover his college expenses, skipping out on trips with friends so I could pitch in when he needed a new laptop. I didn't mind. Honestly, it gave me this sense of purpose, like I was part of his story, his success. When he landed his first real job, I felt proud like a parent would, not just a sibling. So when I heard he was getting married, my heart swelled with excitement. Finally, I thought, another chapter, and I'd get to stand by his side the way I always had. I pictured myself helping him pick out his suit, maybe giving a speech at the reception, telling embarrassing childhood stories, and watching him roll his eyes in that way only siblings can. But here's the thing, even before I knew what was coming, I could feel something, a distance. Our calls became shorter, more surface level. He stopped sharing little things with me, the kind of things he used to call about even if it was midnight. "Don't worry, it's just wedding stress," I told myself. But deep down, a quiet unease was forming, like a draft seeping through a closed window. You can't see it, but you feel it, and it chills you anyway. Still, I pushed those feelings aside. I convinced myself I was overthinking. After all, this was my brother, my best friend, the kid I carried piggyback when he was too tired to walk home from school, the person who once swore we'd always have each other's backs. There was no way he'd leave me out of the biggest day of his life at least. That's what I believed then. Before everything came crashing down, the first signs weren't obvious. At least, not in the beginning. They were the kind of things you brush off, little red flags you fold neatly in your mind because you don't want to believe they mean anything. It started with the conversations. Or rather, the lack of them. Normally, my brother would light up my phone with updates. The caterer was too expensive, the band canceled, or he couldn't decide between navy blue or charcoal gray for his suit. But this time, there was nothing. Weeks would go by, and if I didn't call, I wouldn't hear from him at all. When I did manage to get him on the phone, the conversations felt clipped, rehearsed, like he was reading from some invisible script. "Yeah, everything's fine. Busy, you know how it is." His tone was polite but distant, like I was a coworker he couldn't hang up on just yet. I told myself it was normal. Weddings are stressful. People get overwhelmed. But then there were the subtle slips, the kind that sting more because they're so small. I remember asking him, "So, when's the big day? I want to make sure I clear my schedule." He hesitated, just for a second, but I heard it, that tiny pause. Then he said, "Oh, we haven't nailed it down yet. Still figuring out venues." It didn't sit right. Because a week later, scrolling through Facebook, I saw his fiancée tagged in a post, smiling in front of a save the date sign. The date, the venue, everything, right there, in bold letters, staring back at me from my phone screen. My stomach dropped. I told myself it was a mistake, that maybe the post went up early, that maybe he just forgot to tell me. But that uneasy chill I'd felt before, it started to creep in deeper. Flashbacks began hitting me harder in those moments. Like the time I stayed up all night helping him rehearse for a college presentation because he was terrified of public speaking. I remember his voice cracking and me pushing him through slide after slide until he nailed it. Back then, he trusted me with his fears. And now, I wasn't even trusted with a wedding date. I tried to shake it off, but the cracks were spreading. I noticed he stopped sending me photos of little things, like the tie he was considering or the cake samples they were tasting. It was like watching someone slowly close a door in your face, not all at once, but inch by inch, until the only thing left was silence. And yet, I kept convincing myself, "Don't make this about you. He's just busy. You'll see. When the time comes, he'll call, and everything will be fine." But deep down, I knew Sometimes silence says more than words ever could. The truth didn't come softly. It wasn't whispered to me in a careful, gentle way. No, it came the way most betrayals do, blunt, loud, and merciless, through the kind of medium that makes it sting even more. Social media. I still remember the exact moment. I was sitting on my couch, late evening, scrolling mindlessly through my phone. You know that half distracted, half bored kind of scrolling? Then suddenly, there it was. A photo. My brother, grinning from ear to ear, in a suit that I had never seen, standing next to his bride in her wedding dress. The caption read, "The happiest day of our lives. Thank you to everyone who came and made it so special." Everyone. Everyone but me. My chest tightened as I scrolled through picture after picture. My cousins, my uncles, friends of the family, people I hadn't seen in years, all standing there, dressed to the nines, celebrating my brother's wedding. The wedding I didn't even know had already happened. I wish I could say my first reaction was anger, but it wasn't. It was disbelief. I kept refreshing the page, like maybe the pictures would disappear, like maybe this was some kind of sick joke. My mind kept racing. How? Why? Did I miss an invitation? Was there a mistake? But no, the mistake wasn't mine. It was theirs. Or maybe it wasn't a mistake at all. Maybe it was deliberate. I remember staring at my phone until the screen dimmed from inactivity, just sitting there frozen. The silence of my apartment felt suffocating. It was as if the walls were pressing in, reminding me how utterly alone I was in that moment. And then the anger hit. Not the loud, screaming kind of anger. No, it was quiet, simmering, heavy. The kind of anger that presses into your ribs and doesn't let you breathe. I thought about all the sacrifices I'd made for him, all the times I'd stood up for him, supported him, believed in him. And this was the return? Being cut out of the most important day of his life? Flashbacks crashed over me like waves. Him sitting on my bed years ago, panicking over whether he'd get into his dream school, and me reassuring him he would. The nights I slipped cash into his wallet because I knew he was too proud to ask for help. The promises, the laughter, the trust. And now, not even a seat at the table. Not even a second thought. I wanted to call him right then and there. Demand answers. Scream. But my hands wouldn't move. My voice wouldn't come. All I could do was sit there, staring at photos of my brother's wedding, realizing the person I thought I knew wasn't the same anymore. And maybe, just maybe, he never was. The days that followed felt unreal, like I was moving through water. Everything slowed down, muffled, like the world had turned down its volume and left me alone with the noise inside my head. I'd wake up, roll over, and there it would be again, that memory of the photos. My brother, smiling without me there. Everyone else, dressed and laughing. And me? I was sitting in sweatpants on my couch, scrolling through the proof that I'd been erased. That I didn't call him. Not at first. I couldn't. What would I even say? Hey, congrats on getting married. Thanks for not inviting me. Every sentence I rehearsed sounded pathetic or bitter. So instead, I stayed quiet. But silence has a way of suffocating you. The phone sat next to me on the table like a weight, buzzing occasionally with messages, not from him, of course. From work, from spam, from anyone but the one person I needed to hear from. Every time it buzzed, a part of me hoped. And every time, disappointment cut me a little deeper. Nights were the worst. That's when my mind replayed everything. I'd lie in the dark, staring at the ceiling, and the flashbacks would creep in. Like the night before his first date, when he was terrified he'd embarrass himself. I sat with him for hours, giving him advice, hyping him up, making him laugh. Or the time I showed up to his graduation with a camera that barely worked, desperate to capture every second because I was proud of him. I was always there. Always. And now he couldn't even give me a chair in the back. It wasn't just the exclusion. It was the silence that followed. He didn't text, didn't call, didn't try to explain. And that told me more than words ever could. He chose this. He chose to leave me out. I found myself oscillating between rage and emptiness. One moment, I'd pace the room, muttering to myself, imagining what I'd say if he ever did pick up the phone. The next moment, I'd collapse into the chair and just feel nothing. Like my body shut down to protect me from feeling too much. I avoided family calls too. I didn't want to hear their voices, didn't want to hear them dance around the subject, pretending like nothing happened. Because pretending would hurt worse than honesty, that it's strange how betrayal doesn't always roar. Sometimes it just lingers quietly, eating away at you piece by piece. And that's exactly what those days felt like, being slowly hollowed out by someone I thought would never, ever hurt me like this. The silence said it all. I wasn't just excluded from the wedding. I was excluded from him. After a while, the silence became unbearable. My apartment felt like a cage, the walls closing in tighter every day. Everywhere I looked, there were reminders: the empty chair at my table, the unused wine glasses I'd once imagined clinking together during his rehearsal dinner, even the framed photo of us as kids on the bookshelf. His smile in that picture mocked me now, as if to say, "See, you believed I'd always need you." One evening, after scrolling through more wedding photos I swore I wouldn't look at again, something inside me snapped. I shut my phone off, tossed it face down on the couch, and whispered to myself, "I can't do this anymore. I can't sit here waiting for an apology that's never coming." That's when the idea hit me. Leave. Just leave. Not forever. Not to prove anything. Just to get away from the weight pressing down on me. To breathe again without the ghost of his betrayal following me from room to room. A vacation, I thought. Something spontaneous, reckless even. Because if my own brother could cut me out of his life so cleanly, then maybe I owed it to myself to finally put myself first. That I opened my laptop and started searching. Flights, hotels, anywhere that didn't look like here. My fingers trembled over the keyboard, but with each click, I felt lighter. I didn't care where: the mountains, the beach, some random city where nobody knew my name. I just wanted to wake up in a place where his shadow didn't exist. The irony wasn't lost on me. He had his big wedding, his honeymoon, his picture-perfect start. And here I was, planning my own kind of escape, not out of joy, but survival. A twisted little parallel the universe must have been smirking at. I booked the ticket without overthinking. One way. I didn't even bother with a return date. Maybe that was the rebellion in me, giving myself permission to not know when I'd come back, if at all. Packing felt surreal. Instead of formal clothes I'd once expected to wear at his wedding, I was stuffing swimsuits, sandals, and books into a suitcase. Every folded shirt felt like a small act of defiance, like I was saying, "Fine. If you don't want me there, I'll build a world where I don't need you." By the time I zipped the bag shut, I felt something I hadn't felt in weeks: relief. Not happiness, not yet, but the sense that maybe, just maybe, I was taking back a little control. The decision wasn't about revenge. It was about survival. And for the first time since the betrayal, I felt like I could finally breathe. Stepping off that plane felt like shedding an old skin. The air was different, warmer, saltier, alive in a way that made me realize how stale my own world had become. I remember pausing on the tarmac, just letting the wind hit my face, carrying scents of ocean and sunscreen, and thinking, this is what freedom smells like. The first morning, I woke up to sunlight streaming through curtains I hadn't hung. Myself, in a bed that didn't know my weight yet. No buzzing phone, no shadow of betrayal. Just the sound of waves in the distance and the muffled chatter of strangers starting their day. It was the first time in weeks that my chest didn't feel tight, that I wandered the streets with no agenda. I tasted food I couldn't even pronounce, sat at cafes where no one knew me, and let myself melt into the rhythm of a life that wasn't mine. It felt indulgent, selfish in the best possible way. For once, I wasn't someone's older sibling, protector, or financial safety net. I was just me, a person sitting with an iced coffee, staring at a fountain, anonymous and weightless. The little details hit me hardest. The way the cobblestone streets warmed under the afternoon sun, making the soles of my sandals hot. The way a local guitarist strummed on a corner, his music carrying through the air like a soundtrack meant just for me. The way laughter spilled out of open restaurant doors, reminding me there was joy in the world. Even if I'd forgotten how it sounded, I even laughed myself, really laughed, when I got lost one evening, wandering through narrow alleys until I stumbled onto a tiny bookstore lit with strings of yellow bulbs. I bought a secondhand novel in a language I couldn't read, just because the cover felt like a souvenir of a night I didn't want to forget. And for the first time since that wedding-shaped wound had been carved into me, I stopped thinking about him, about them, my brother, his bride, their silence. It all blurred, softened, like background noise I no longer needed to turn up. Of course, The irony wasn't completely lost on me. While they were probably sipping champagne on their honeymoon, here I was, finding a different kind of happiness in cheap street food and strangers' smiles. But it didn't matter. This was my honeymoon with myself. A celebration I hadn't been invited to elsewhere, so I threw one for me that I won't lie and say the pain disappeared. It didn't. It lingered, like a bruise under the skin. But for the first time, I realized pain didn't have to be the only thing I felt. There was still color, still taste, still sound. Life wasn't done giving me pieces of beauty. I just stopped noticing them. And in that glow of foreign streets and salty air, I felt alive again. Not healed, not whole, but alive. And maybe that was enough. It happened on the third night. I'd spent the day exploring the markets, tasting fried snacks from paper cones, and bargaining for souvenirs I didn't really need. By evening, I was tired but content, wandering back toward the hotel under strings of hanging lights that swayed in the breeze. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't thinking about home. I wasn't thinking about him. And then, I froze there. She was his wife. My brother's wife. At first, I thought my mind was playing tricks on me. Maybe I was projecting, seeing faces I knew where they didn't belong. But no, it was her. The same woman I'd only really seen through photos, her arm wrapped around him at family gatherings. Her smile was unmistakable. Only this time, that smile wasn't for my brother. She was sitting at an outdoor cafe, leaning in close to a man I'd never seen before. Not in the friendly, casual way you lean when you're sharing a joke. No, this was different. Her hand rested on his arm. His fingers brushed her chin. The kind of touch that isn't casual at all. My heart sank straight to the pit of my stomach. For a moment, I just stood there, caught between disbelief and the sting of cruel irony. I mean, what were the odds? I fly across the world to escape the pain of being excluded from his wedding, only to stumble straight into this. I ducked into the shadow of a nearby shop front, my mind spinning. I could hear my pulse pounding in my ears, louder than the cafe music playing in the background. My eyes kept darting back to them, as if maybe, just maybe, I was wrong. Maybe they were just old friends, catching up. But no, the way they laughed too closely, the way she tilted her head, the way he leaned in, it wasn't friendship. It was intimacy. And then came the bitterness. That sharp, sarcastic voice in my head that hissed. So, he didn't invite you to the wedding, but she still managed to show up in your vacation. Lucky you. I wanted to march up to her table, slam my hand down, and say everything that was burning inside me. Does he know? Does my brother know what you're doing here? But my feet stayed rooted. I couldn't move. I couldn't even breathe properly. Instead, I pulled out my phone. My hand shook so badly I almost dropped it, but I managed to snap a photo. Proof. Proof that this wasn't just some twisted hallucination brought on by heartbreak and exhaustion. Proof that the woman who married my brother was already betraying him. I shoved the phone back into my pocket and stumbled away, the sounds of their laughter chasing me down the street like an echo I couldn't escape. And that's when the war inside me began, the one that would keep me awake for nights to come. That night, I barely slept. I lay in the unfamiliar hotel bed, the ceiling fan spinning lazily above me, and my mind running in circles like it was on fire. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw them. Her hand on his arm. His smile, too familiar, too intimate. Her laugh, the same one I'd heard at family dinners, only softer, reserved for him. Not my brother. I kept pulling out my phone, staring at the blurry photo I'd taken. My proof. Proof I never should have had. Proof I didn't even want. The question eating at me was simple. What do I do now? Part of me wanted to call him right away, to scream down the phone. This is the woman you cut me out of your life for? The woman you married without me there? Look at what she's doing, while you're probably still unpacking wedding gifts. The anger surged like wildfire, feeding off every memory of his betrayal. It would be so easy to let the truth scorch him, the way his choices had scorched me. But then the doubt crept in. Would he even believe me? Or would he twist it into another reason to hate me? After all, he'd already erased me from the wedding. Maybe this would just give him an excuse to erase me completely. And deeper still, a darker thought whispered, why should I even tell him? Why should I save someone who didn't think I was worth a chair at his own wedding? Maybe silence would be my revenge. Let him find out the hard way. Let him feel blindsided, the same way I did. I rolled over, pressing my face into the pillow, the weight of that thought suffocating me. Because as much as I wanted revenge, I still loved him. That was the cruelest part. Even after everything, he was still my brother. Still the boy who leaned on me during storms, who asked me to promise I'd always have his back. And wasn't this what that promise meant? Having his back, even when he didn't deserve it? I sat up, the glow of my phone lighting the room, and scrolled through our old messages. His thanks, love you texts, his stupid emojis, the way he used to call me at 2 a.m. just to vent. It felt like I was grieving someone who was still alive. That my chest ached with the weight of two truths fighting each other. The brother who abandoned me, and the brother I still couldn't stop caring about. I whispered out loud into the empty room. What would hurt more, telling him or staying silent? And the worst part was, I didn't know the answer. The confrontation wasn't with her or him. It was with myself. And no matter which choice I made, it felt like I was going to lose. By the next morning, I couldn't keep it bottled up anymore. My head was pounding, my stomach felt twisted, and I knew I couldn't keep replaying the same loop in my mind. I needed to decide. Tell him, or let it rot inside me forever. I stared at my phone for what felt like hours, thumb hovering over his contact. His name lit up on the screen like it was mocking me. How many times had I been the first person he called? And now here I was, debating if he even deserved to hear my voice. Finally, I hit call. The ringing dragged on, each buzz clawing at my nerves. And then his voice. My brother's voice. For a second, all the anger, all the betrayal, it cracked. Under the sound of him saying my name, I almost hung up, almost let it go, but I didn't. Instead, the words tumbled out, shaky and sharp. I saw her. I saw your wife. She wasn't with you. She was with someone else. And it wasn't innocent. Silence. Long enough that I thought maybe the line had dropped. And then he laughed. Not a real laugh, a bitter, short one. You. No, I should have expected this. You weren't at the wedding, so now you're trying to ruin it after the fact. That broke something inside me. I wasn't at the wedding because you didn't invite me. My voice cracked, louder than I intended. I found out through pictures, like some stranger. And now you want to act like I'm the problem? I didn't go looking for this. She landed right in front of me. Do you think I want to know this about her? Another silence. This one heavier. I could hear him breathing, could picture him running. His hand through his hair the way he always did when his world started tilting. Finally, he whispered, almost too quietly, send me the picture. My fingers trembled as I opened the photo and hit send. The little check mark appeared. Delivered. That was it. Proof sitting in his pocket, waiting to blow apart his brand new marriage. I wish I could say I felt relieved. But I didn't. I felt sick. Like I just pushed him off a cliff and couldn't take it back. He didn't say much after that. Just a quiet, broken, I'll call you later. And then the line went dead. I sat there, staring at my reflection in the dark screen, wondering if I'd done the right thing or just burned the last bridge we had. Because here's the thing about breaking points. They don't feel like triumph. They feel like grief. Like something inside you snapped, and even if it was necessary, you know nothing will ever be the same again. The call never came. Not that night. Not the next morning. Not even a week later. Just silence. The same silence that had been between us long before the wedding. Only now, it wasn't filled with confusion. It was filled with finality. For days, I kept checking my phone, half expecting to see his name light up, half dreading it. When nothing came, I realized maybe that was my answer. Maybe the truth wasn't something he could face. Maybe I had become the messenger he couldn't forgive, even if deep down he knew I wasn't lying. And so, I stopped waiting. I walked along the beach one evening, the sun bleeding orange into the waves, and it hit me how strange grief can be. Because I wasn't just grieving my brother's betrayal or his wife's infidelity. I was grieving an entire lifetime of memories, Sunday mornings, whispered promises, the idea that family was forever. That illusion had been shattered. But here's the thing. As painful as it was, there was also a strange freedom in letting it go. I didn't have to keep holding on to a version of him that no longer existed. I didn't have to keep bleeding for someone who wouldn't even give me a seat at his table. Instead, I could choose me. And I did, in small ways. I kept exploring. I let myself get lost in side streets, order desserts without guilt, strike up conversations with strangers I'd never see again. I started to find pieces of myself in these quiet, ordinary joys. Not the sibling, not the caretaker, Not the forgotten invite, just me. Sometimes, late at night, the bitterness still crept in. I'd wonder how he was handling the truth. If he confronted her, if he stayed, if he ever thought about me at all. But those thoughts didn't consume me anymore. They drifted through, then drifted out, like clouds that no longer had the power to block the sun. That I realized closure isn't about getting answers. It isn't about hearing someone say, "I'm sorry." It's about deciding the silence doesn't get to control you anymore. It's about looking at the broken pieces and saying, "I don't have to fix this. I just have to walk away." So that's what I did. I walked away, not with anger, not with revenge, but with a quiet acceptance. My brother made his choices. His wife made hers. And now, finally, I was making mine. And maybe that's the real story here. Not the betrayal, not the heartbreak, but the survival. The fact that even when family fails you, even when trust crumbles, you can still find yourself standing, not whole, not healed, but alive and moving forward. And that's enough.